What I've heard that makes sense to me is the idea that technology is a lot like air conditioning and water and electricity. Those are things that we just don't have school without anymore. Those are things that are really essential to us. And so when budgeting and planning, we want to make sure that those big rocks go in first.
You're listening to the smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This is our District Talk segment where we interview district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday shine online. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Hello, my name is Jeff Schuler. I'm superintendent of Wheaton-Warrenville, District 200. We're a school that is directly west of Chicago, suburban Chicago. We educate about 12,000 students in 20 schools, including 13 elementary, 4 middle, and 2 high schools.
Hi, John Puglisi here, superintendent of the Rio School District in Southern California. We've got 9 schools in grades TK through 8. We have about 5,000 students.
Hi, my name is Doug Brubaker. I'm superintendent of schools in Texarkana Independent School District. We are in Texarkana, Texas, just across the state line from Arkansas. We have a district of about 7,000 students spread across 11 sites.
How have you been successful in increasing parent engagement to help keep students safe on social media?
So I think one, very, very consciously this year, I think we've tried to shift the conversation a little bit away from thinking about how we approach that conversation through putting parameters on the use of technology and reframe that to how can we use those tools in the most positive way. So even in looking very recently at the kind of the advancements in AI and what that's going to do, right? You can either approach the conversation through saying, how do we put parameters around acceptable use, or how do we reshape that to help students think about how they use those new tools in a responsible way to kind of maximize to guide learning. So one, I think it's just it is a function of helping students learn that there are multiple tools at their disposal that support learning. Technology is one of them, but we have to think about where it's most impactful, where it's most productive, and when it's okay to turn it off and use a different tool or a different resource or a different modality that may well include other students in the classroom or other kind of human capital resources as well.
One thing that we've done to help improve the distribution, frequency, and quality of parental communications is to ultimately move towards a unified single platform. So we use this Parent Square tool, and we selected it specifically. And the high school district that our district moves into, our kids move into, also uses that. So there was some logistical familiarity that we thought would come from it. But in the past, we were very, we really believe in school sites and teachers being able to choose and use their own media. But in this case, we decided to all come together and use one platform. And that has made a tremendous impact on just norming over longitudinally how many people use it, how well they use it, and the qualities of those things. And it's allowed us to, another component of that is really diligently and consistently trying to work towards 100% engagement of some level.
As part of our one-to-one deployment, there have been parent sessions that students have been involved in, and also families when they come up to pick up the device. And that's provided a great opportunity to talk not only about care of the device and how to use it appropriately, but also some of those dangers and some of those issues that are related to social media. We want for our students to be safe when they interact with the technology, just as they would be here at school. And so teaching responsible use is really an important part of what we do here.
Are there any stories that come to mind about any social media incidents you have been able to get in front of or avoid by being proactive?
Yeah, so one, I think awareness is critical for for parents. Just as I think educators are kind of trying to continue to learn what's new and what advancements are out there, right? So that the challenge exists for parents as well. So one, simply raising awareness, making parents know or aware of what tools do they have available at their disposal. So we've partnered with some entities locally, including both some of our kind of local first responders, police departments, other entities that have resources available to parents. Two, we've shared with parents more recently as we move into this upcoming school year, some tools that they have or that they can use to kind of help monitor what their students are doing online, what their students are using technology for, so that they can partner with us at whatever level an individual parent is comfortable or desires to partner with us. Everything from really being able to know how on a device they can actually kind of turn the internet off to just simply monitoring where their kids are at so they can have productive conversations. That I think has been the most impactful or meaningful kind of work that we've launched is really just helping parents know what tools are available to them and how can they use them to partner with us in this effort.
We utilize this one tool called Sprigio, and we know the creator quite well. It's like an alert system, but it's much more than an alert system. So when students feel concerns about various things, their own or other students or whatever is going on, they build a familiarity with this tool over time now that they send anonymous communications, and those ones are carefully screened by the appropriate administrator, so on and so forth. And I can give you numerous examples, but I won't give us to them specifically, of where things have been prevented and addressed early. But also the thing that we've been able to see now over a couple of years is the cultural norm, which we build in the physical space, a caring environment where we're trying to encourage students to help each other, care about each other. And that sometimes, is difficult for students face to face contiguously. But, we're helping them learn those skills, how to be a friend, how to help someone who's reaching out. But this tool is a very interesting tool, and just the idea of that tool, and it has manifestly increased so that students feel a greater comfort. And the result has been that there's an immediacy in it too, a steady increase of responsive prevention. And so that, I think that to me, that is a social media tool.
What we try to do as a leadership team is to put ourselves in the position of the parents and try to predict what might provoke some thought, some changes that we're in the process of making. So this past year, we purchased metal detectors for our secondary schools. Well, you can imagine that when kids come to school, that experience of coming in is going to be different, and it's going to be initially slower, and it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So by putting information out using our parent notification software, texts, and emails, we were able to give our parents a heads up about that these past several weeks of the school year so that they could be better prepared for it. And the good news is that as a result of having that experience in May, it's going to make us even that much better prepared for the beginning of school in the fall.
What would your advice be to educators and administrators to work together to create a culture of digital safety and responsibility in their schools?
Certainly, I think in the last year, we've dealt with or addressed a number of issues around student safety, whether that be a perceived or a true threat, right, online that was made. And so I think, again, we've been able to utilize information very quickly to partner with those that we need to kind of immediately kick in any of our threat assessment protocols or safety protocols. And I think we've been pretty impactful in trying to use the tools available to us to partner very quickly and ultimately kind of get to the bottom of perceived information quickly before the next school day begins. One piece of advice would be partner with students. So we've done a lot both with our technology department and our buildings to really try to activate productively the student voice to help us in this work. One of the other programs we launched in this past school year is a future educator pathway or process, and we've utilizing some of the students even that are part of that pathway to help us in this kind of broader space of how do we most productively partner with students or with our kids to really keep students safe and use technology in the most productive way. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice is partner with students, activate, utilize their voice when you can, because I think they often have a lot of great insight into what they're experiencing and what their peers are experiencing, and again, how we can keep the conversation from being kind of an us versus them as we're talking about acceptable or productive use of technology and a true partnership.
Yeah, my advice to all educators is that some of the basics that we are charged with doing in helping students learn to read and write and history and science and social studies and inquiry, inside all of those spaces, critically understanding the world, what's going on, has always been an important thing for students. And having an inquiring mind and developing those tools of inquiry is always at the core of good pedagogy. And in this case, this incredibly powerful and ever-changing and elusive sets of media and tools just doubles the demand for those basic practices that we need to work on. We always needed to work on those, but particularly as the need to consume and store information is less important than in this new age that we live in, and the need to be able to search, understand, critically think about information, and then ultimately making and creating is a synthetic process that allows those who you make with and make for to kind of vet and collaborate in the learning process. And that is a network function as opposed to this atomized notion of my teacher gives me a thing, I do it, I turn it into them, they give an answer. So I would say that it's really critical to think about the main thing that we do, which we'll call it pedagogy. Like, what are the activities that students do in learning, and how do those things contribute to this question that you just asked?
I think it's really about being thoughtful and intentional to just delve into. We have a technology committee that meets every couple of weeks as part of our one-to-one deployment to talk through emerging issues and how the program is going. And those kinds of intentional opportunities to talk about threats, opportunities, strengths, growth areas within our programs helps to identify challenges and then also ways to address them. So I think it's just being really intentional about it and then having that dialogue with families as you go along.
What are your 1 to 2 biggest social media concerns for the future?
I think my biggest concern with social media is just in the fact that I think it has the potential, or does have kind of a very addictive element to it for kids. I think students have a hard time knowing how to turn it off. I see that in my own children, my children at home, but also our students in our school district, that the ability to be able to discern when the use is productive from when they're really getting pulled into that space and perhaps not kind of thinking very clearly or objectively is difficult. So I think teaching students strategies to know how to use it in moderation, how to use it productively, but how we frame that experience in a way that allows them to do that is probably my biggest concern.
My biggest social media concern for the future and still for now is student agency, student sense of self, and the uptick in the last 10 years, which is prominent and profound and expressed by educators that I work with all across the spectrum, that socio-emotional challenges that students are having at ever younger years, but also with a much wider bandwidth, is somehow deeply connected to just technology in general, whether we call it social media. I mean, all media is now social. I mean, it's just all social. So the intersections of the work that we do with students and their learning, and how we help students understand what's going on. I know that sounds like a simple thing, but that's the basis of the strength of good pedagogy in my mind, inquiring pedagogy. First, to build the skills, or simultaneously to build the skills to understanding and to production. But more, it's really the understanding of what's going on, and then a sense of agency. That's why I have emphasized production and making in response to these questions, because inside those processes, there is a built-in agency. And oftentimes we do things collaboratively, so there's a built-in community or collective agency.
Josh, I'd say that one of the things that we struggle with is that when a post comes out, it may be at 2:00 in the morning on a Sunday night, with school starting, 6 hours from then, right? And so the timing and monitoring social media to make sure that we respond to concerns that are expressed there, that's a really big challenge for school districts. And we depend on our families and our students. If you see something, say something. And to this point, we've been very fortunate that those feedback loops have closed in time for us to prepare to respond to threats or inaccurate information, whatever the issue may be.
Funding is tough. What advice would you give to other school districts to secure funding to create resources that parents need?
The low-hanging fruit to that question is to maximize opportunities for, grant funding outside, of the district funding sources. We've been successful in securing some grant funds to support some of our efforts related to technology, and especially safety with technology. I think too, though, at the end of the day, you always have to make decisions about what's the priority within a budget. So if this work is important and you prioritize it as important, then you prioritize it when it comes to allocating resources and building it into your budget. So I think probably the key is recognizing it as a priority, recognizing it as something that you absolutely need to fund, and then you make space for it.
I think it's really just a matter of priorities. I know when people say to me funding is difficult, I usually say I get the same money to the Rio School District as most people get, and we don't seem to have challenges with funding. I think it's about a prioritization of what you spend your money on, and making sure that you're constantly thinking about why you spend what you spend it on and what results you're getting from that. Also, there's so many awesome opportunities for free, open source things. I would say that's really an important thing. But I also would say that just follow your money. So my advice would be a ongoing examination of what you spend your money on will help you to determine what's best to go get money or to use it. But I think more money is always better. We never have a problem in Rio figuring out how to spend money wisely, and you're always having to prioritize more or less. But I would say just being really reflective in an ongoing way about what are your goals and how is the money that you're spending going to those things. Although that sounds so simple and obvious.
That is a big challenge too. Our legislative session here in our state ended with no increase to the annual allotment per student allotment. And you know that inflation has just been soaring the last several years. So our costs have gone up significantly. What I've heard that makes sense to me is the idea that technology is a lot like air conditioning and water and electricity. Those are things that we just don't have school without anymore. Those are things that are really essential to us. And so when budgeting and planning, we want to make sure that those big rocks go in first. It's a challenge because technology is expensive and we know that replacement cycles are really important, but it's critical to be intentional and to take the long view so that you're able to replace devices and add services and do those kinds of things so that parents and families are well served. The other thing I'd share is that there have been some new federal resources for at-home internet access and building awareness of those. It's a part of education that changes a lot. And so trying to stay on top of that and share that information as you get it is really important too.
Thanks for listening to our smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This was our District Talk segment where we interview school district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday launch into their future by shining online. This episode was brought to you by our smartsocial.com VIP program. It's called the Very Informed Parent Program, which helps you engage your students with teen-led video lessons. Stay one step ahead with our premium parent newsletter and discover hidden features on trending apps on teens' phones and our 54 plus live parent and student-friendly events every single year. You can click on the link below to chat with one of our team members if you want a free pass to our VIP program to support your community with our smartsocial.com resources. And if you're a district leader who has a success story, we would love to feature you on a future episode. You can click the links below to reach out. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a great day.